Feeling good. I'm calling to order the meeting of the Pittsboro Town Board of Commissioners for tonight, Monday, November 28th, 2022. And as is our usual practice, we will begin our meeting with a moment of silence. Thank you. Commissioner Farrell, would you lead us in the pledge?
Would everyone rise for the pledge? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
It's my honor tonight to present two resolutions, the first of which is honoring a retired member of our police force. And so Carol Edwin Swain Jr., you would come forward, please. You know, it takes a moment like this for us to discover you're a real person. And the resolution is thus. Whereas Carol Edwin Swain Jr. began working for the Pittsboro Police Department on October 3rd, 2007, and officially retired on October 31st, 2022. And whereas during his career, he held the positions of patrol officer, patrol sergeant, staff sergeant, local alcohol and beverage commission officer for the North Carolina Alcohol Enforcement Division, and patrol lieutenant. And whereas his commitment, willingness, and ability to understand and respond to the concerns of the citizens of Pittsboro has made a substantial contribution to the betterment of our community. And whereas North Carolina General Statute 20-187.2 provides that retiring members of municipal law enforcement agencies may receive at the time of their retirement the badge worn or carried by them during their service with the municipality. And whereas North Carolina General Statute 20-187.2 further provides that the governing body of the municipal law enforcement agency may, in its discretion, award to a retiring member the service sidearm of such retiring member. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Board of Commissioners of the Town of Pittsboro, North Carolina, that Carol Edwin Swain Jr. is hereby officially commended on behalf of the citizens of Pittsboro for valuable service rendered to the town in his official capacity as a police officer, for his professionalism, dedication, unwavering commitment, willingness, and ability to understand and respond to the concerns of the citizens of Pittsboro. Be it further resolved that the town manager or his designee be hereby authorized in accordance with the provisions of North Carolina General Statute 20-187.2 to transfer to Edwin Carroll Swain Jr. the badge worn by him during his service with the Pittsboro Police Department and his service sidearm, a Glock Model 17 9mm pistol series number DBA X753. And be it further resolved that this resolution be made part of the permanent record of the town of Pittsboro, and a copy of this resolution be presented to Carol Edwin Swain Jr. And may I have a motion to adopt this resolution by the board?
So moved.
Moved by Pamela Baldwin,
Second.
seconded by John Bonitz. Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries unanimously, and therefore it is adopted. This is the 28th day of November, 2022. Signed by me as mayor and Gary Bailey. Is there
Swain. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
We also have a resolution, and I would ask Megan Scoggins to come forward to receive that resolution. And the resolution reads, whereas Kenzie Scoggins, 5 years old, a resident of Siler City, North Carolina, on December 8th, 2021, was diagnosed with an aggressive brain tumor called childhood diffuse intrinsic pontine glaucoma. More easily said, DIPG. And whereas DIPG forms within the brainstem, is inoperable and currently has no cure, with a statistic of having only a 1% chance of living 5 years. As the tumor progresses, it puts pressure on the nerves that control the body's vital functions, which slowly cause paralysis. Yet those suffering remain fully aware. And whereas Kenzie Scoggins underwent numerous treatments, tests, and appointments over 9 months, and whereas Kenzie Scoggins passed away on September 18, 2022, in the comfort of her home. And whereas annually on December 17 will be recognized as a day of remembrance as Bushel and Peck Day to raise awareness of DIPG. Now therefore be it resolved that the mayor and town board of commissioners for the town of Pittsboro recognizes December 17 annually for Bushel and Peck Day. And if I could have a motion from the board.
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Farrell.
Second.
Second by Mayor Pro-Tem Baldwin. Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries unanimously and is adopted this 28th day of November, 2022. Signed by me as mayor and attested by our town clerk.
Thank you.
First matter is the adoption of the agenda. You have your agenda before you, either to approve the agenda as proposed or in some matter amend the agenda. Is there a motion?
Make a motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Shipp, seconded by Commissioner Farrell. Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries unanimously. Under citizens matters, the next matter is the manager's update. And Hazen Blodgett is with us for his update.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the board. We've had a busy busy week. I do send out a weekly update to you all, and really the major focus is water and sewer. That's what we spend a lot of our time on. We last week had a meeting down in Sanford with the Sanford folks and a couple of Chatham Park folks as well to talk about the merger. You know, what does Sanford need? They think they need. We started to kind of spell out what we felt like Pittsboro would need. Really kind of at a high level, I guess, bullet points to start thinking about what does the merger look like. It was a very positive meeting. Their mayor was there, and I think her focus was what she told us was what's good for the citizens in the region long term. And I think that's very smart thinking on Sanford's part, because this area is just going to grow, and to be great and vibrant, water and sewer is critical. So I think we have exciting times ahead of us. There's a lot of work to do. One of the things we're going to start doing is looking for someone an attorney to help craft this with us. The mayor has appointed Commissioner Shipp to be the liaison to make sure a board member is kind of in on all these discussions, because they are very technical, and I think it's smart to have kind of a liaison that you guys can hear from, not just staff, but kind of a equal. Just remember, on the 13th, we're going to hear from Friesen Nichols to talk about the merger and the rate study. I think that's going to be very important. I want to shout out to Kent Jackson, doing a great job kind of on the engineering end, because, well, just as an example, we opened bids. The bids came in around $55 million. We had 4 of them, and they're pretty closely aligned. So you could say, well, it looks like we have kind of a cluster, I guess. So I know Kent is working with the engineer to see if there's ways to value engineer that. And then we're trying to set up a meeting this week with the Division of Water Infrastructure to talk about how do we close the gap, because we got about $26.5 million in revolving loan fund. And we have a grant out there for around $9 million, which we feel good about getting. We haven't heard that official yet, but there's still a gap to be closed. We're aware of the cost, and so is Friesen Nichols, at least what we're looking at. So I think that makes it all the more important to hear what Friesen Nichols has to say about closing this gap. If I were a board member, what I would be thinking about is, right now we only have 2,100 customers. Like, how do you pay for these very expensive infrastructure costs? But the way to look at this, look at it as a 20 and 30 year whatever horizon, and there's going to be, you know, I don't know, 22 to 25,000 more residential units in our community. So you can do a lot of things with that kind of customer base. We're going to do the Pittsboro orientation Citizens Academy. We're going to start that in April, thanks to Colby and his leadership. And we're going to start taking applications in January. So I'm happy to answer any questions the board may have.
Thank you. Any questions for Hazen Blodgett? Well, the high point of my week, or the time since our last meeting, certainly was on Sunday when we had the tree lighting. It commenced the series of events called Holly Days, which celebrate the season. And I must say that the tree lighting is one of my favorite events. Santa and I were up on the balcony, and we decided this was the right year to have a little boy, Commissioner Shipp's little boy, Rory, to come and join us on the balcony. We also had my granddaughter, who is 13 or 14. So there we go. Isn't that better? No?
No, I think you turned it on.
So there we go. I can hear it now. So it was a wonderful gay time with small children that we had picked from the crowd, and with Rory Shipp and my granddaughter. And I even danced with Santa, which is just a wonderful event. We're looking forward to the Christmas parade, which is a Sunday in the second week, I believe, of December. And this has just always been a really fun time to be together in this community. So, Mayor Pro-Tem Baldwin, any updates for you?
I do not have any updates. We have a Chatham County Affordable Housing Advisory Committee meeting on Thursday. And I have Triangle J Council of Governments meeting on actually Friday. So I will report to you all with those the next meeting.
Commissioner Bonitz,
No updates from me.
Commissioner Farrell.
I attended a PBA meeting 2 weeks ago. Officer Sam Bradford gave a very nice lecture and lessons into downtown security and things like that, businesses and homes. Pretty much talked about the upcoming events downtown. It was a nice and short and sweet meeting.
Commissioner Shipp.
Sure. So since our last regular meeting, I did a citizens board training put on by UNC and how to work with citizen advisory boards. So lots of good information there. I'll get that out to the board. Did the second part of the training that was required as a distressed unit and for water and wastewater. And again, a lot of good information there for all of us. I went to the future land use update community workshops and was glad to see a good turnout there and all the work that's progressing on that. And then November 16th, we had an EDC meeting. Just lots going on that they don't tell us about. Again, CAM is still the second largest mega site in North Carolina with the property that's left even after Wolfspeed. And certainly we think it's the best for a lot of reasons. And then Wolfspeed is going to do a vendor event on January 18th here at the Ag Center to get to recruit local vendors to all through construction and operations of that project there. Thursday I have AHAC, and then that's it.
Thank you. Commissioner Vose.
Tuesday, the 15th, the Arts Council met. I don't have anything Pittsboro related for that. Also on that same Tuesday, I was able to go to the future land use planning session. Flow. So many words. Flow. Yeah. And then on the 20th, I made it out to the holidays Christmas tree lighting with Wayland, and we had a good time out there.
Good. And you're our representative to the Chamber of Commerce now. So we look forward to future reports on that. Do we have anyone signed up to make public comment tonight? No one has signed up. So that takes us next to the consent agenda. There is one matter on the consent agenda that I need to pull for a slight correction on minutes. Is that the November 3rd or is it the October 24th? Okay, so item number 6 on the consent agenda, I would like to take as old business.
And I would like to pull storm drainage engineering specifications for conversation.
All right. And would that be old or new business?
I think that's new business.
New business? Shall we take that first?
Fine with me.
Okay. All right. With the exception of those two items moved from the consent agenda to the regular agenda, is there a motion to adopt the balance of the consent agenda?
So moved.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem Baldwin. Seconded by Commissioner Vose. Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries unanimously. We have no public hearings tonight. The piece of old business that I asked to be removed from the consent agenda deals with the minutes of October 24th. And there was a recitation of those people who were appointed to the Board of Adjustment. And that was correctly reported by our town clerk. However, after that approval, it was discovered that one of the appointees to the Board of Adjustment from the ETJ no longer lives in the ETJ. He's moved just a short distance away that places him outside the ETJ. And so we will need to replace him, Johnny Richardson, in the in the Board of Adjustment enrolling. So I'd like to remove Johnny Richardson from the minutes so essentially we don't end up confused. Although it didn't happen until after we were last approved, we last had our minutes. Maybe there could be a note indicating that Mr. Richardson did not qualify as a member of the ETJ and that his name simply be noted in that way. Is that the best thing to do, Mr. Misc? No,
The minutes reflect the action you took. That's the action you took.
that's true.
If you choose to fill the vacancy because he's ineligible at some tonight or some other meeting,
Mhm.
that would be new matter that you would take up.
Okay, I don't believe that we have a substitute name for that position at this point. So then, shall we then, upon advice of council, approve the minutes of October 24th, since they do correctly reflect what was done on October 24th. And at a future meeting, we will again look at the roster for the Board of Adjustment and make the appropriate changes. Could we have a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Bonitz,
Second.
seconded by Commissioner Farrell. Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the minutes of October 24th, 2022 are thus approved. Under new business, we're going to take the storm drainage engineering specifications first, if we might. And Mr. Bonitz wanted to ask some additional questions or get some additional thoughts about that engineering report.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Hayes and Kent, for responding by email. But I did want to take the opportunity, if we can, to address as many questions as we can. You received that in email. I'll be happy to recite them again if you wish.
Yeah, if you don't mind, it's convenient.
And also for your convenience, I think I'd like to contextualize this because of course, I'm privileged to study climate change and climate policy, and indeed more severe weather events are increasing in both severity and frequency. And in August of 2018, we had a flood that took out the culvert and road crossing to Pittsboro Elementary School. And elsewhere in town, it flooded highways and main streets, and also flooded the businesses at the Main Street station, which you may have heard about. There was also a sinkhole that was formed in a storm drain that was poorly built on the other side of the street at Pittsboro Business Center. So the work that you've done is very important, and I very much appreciate that you've compiled these specifications. The first question, of course, is that this does pertain to the rest of town, not the PDD, the MUPD, et cetera.
No, so just kind of to clarify, what these are new. These are, so basically these specifications pertain to the drainage system, basically the system that collects the stormwater from the street or roadside and transports it to the stormwater control devices. So that particular thing is not addressed in the Chatham Park stormwater elements. So this will apply. This will apply townwide, including the PDD. And the reason is because it is it's more of a construction specification than a design specification, so to speak. So it will apply townwide.
Thank you for that clarification. I could tell that you've done a lot of diligent work in seeking input from a lot of stakeholders and comparing policies with other municipalities. Just one little thing, this may seem like insignificant, but is it possible for us to have all of these new storm drains imprinted somehow to indicate that they drain to Jordan Lake?
Certainly, I mean, if that is, that's the board's pleasure, that certainly can be, specifications can be amended as such. As they're currently written, they would be imprinted with town of Pittsboro, logo to identify them as town, assets, if you would, but certainly if that's the board's pleasure, that can be added. Probably, well, in most cases, be no additional cost to the town.
Well, my thinking is that watershed awareness is a good thing, and it's a necessary thing as we grow and attract more people who are not aware of our local challenges and environmental ethics. And so many of us do enjoy the lake and fishing and swimming there that I think it'd be a nice thing to do, and so many other towns do it as well.
So Commissioner Bonitz, what I would suggest is, I don't know. I mean, I've seen them in other communities too. There's probably a little cost to print it up, and then you got to hire somebody to glue them on.
Leave all
So
that to
my
staff.
suggestion would be, at budget time, we could get a cost estimate for it. Y'all could it's going to cost $4,000 or something like that. That's one way to do it, is do it as part of the fiscal year 24 budget. If y'all feel it's very important now, we could get some costs to do it now, but I just want to be clear on kind of what we would need to research on our part, if that's the will of the board.
Well, I guess it's an open question whether or not I'm thinking about the new infrastructure. And it's an open question whether or not that's a cost borne by the installation of the equipment by developers or.
But I mean, certainly in the case of development projects, it will be a developer expense. I mean, if we say the spec is to have, drains to Jordan Lake or whatever body of water, then that's what we will inspect for. So that would be a development expense. I mean, the other part, of course, is, we have replacements and so forth that our public works crews do. So we would want to have a, somewhat limited inventory of covers and catch basin lids and so forth for that purpose. But that quantity would be fairly limited, I would think.
Are others interested in that?
But we might be talking about two different things. It sounds like you're talking about like an applique that I've seen. And then are you talking about having the casting changed from the foundry?
Yeah, or some other means of imprinting. I really, if the board is interested in such a message, I think it can be left to staff to bring it back or finalize. I just think it's important that we make that statement as we grow, that our infrastructure be a part of education.
I know I've seen that imprinted in on the castings in larger communities, and a warning against putting poisons or waste material down in that stream. So I certainly understand your concern, and certainly as we grow, there will be people who probably don't know where our stormwater goes. So I think it's a timely and an environmentally sound idea.
That's great.
Yes,
I think I'd rather see it at the foundry than like some sort of applied decal that's just gonna wear off or scrape off. The time to do it would be when the die is cast, so to speak.
Yeah, I agree. I've seen it at the foundry also, and it really is very interesting. When I did see that, I was like, oh, that drains to such and such a place. So I think it's a FYI type situation too. So I think that would be a good idea.
Yeah, I'll interject there. I mean, there will be there will be a place for the applied or appliques as well. I mean, we have storm drains now throughout town that, as they're replaced or through some periodic scheduled, appliques will be added to those that have already been cast.
Thank you. And will these specifications be updated, and if so, how frequently?
Yes, I mean, the nature of these are such that the updates would not be frequent. However, they would be updated on frequency that's needed or appropriate.
And so does this document, I did note at one point a 30-year data pool from which modeling would be done on, I think, per hour rainfall events. And it just made me wonder, does this document take into account consideration of increasing frequency of higher intensity rainfall events in recent decades?
Yeah, the typical reference data is NOAA. That's typically where the reference. So it would, of course, it would be consistent with that organization's updates.
Mm-hmm. I just don't know what the difference is between a 30-year retrospective and, for example, a 20-year retrospective. And it makes me wonder if there is a difference. So
yeah, and I mean, we would probably need to give that some more thought. I mean, my first thought is that, I mean, if there are changes, I mean, those changes are going to get brought forward, more quickly relatively if we're doing the 20-year, look back versus 30-year.
mm-hmm.
That's really the only thing that comes to mind.
Yep.
Right off the top.
Okay. And the in that same section, I think it was there was mention of for certain specific structures, 1-year storm, and I think a 10-year storm, and then at the outfall, 100-year storm. Or maybe I'm not using the right language, but that's the kind of place where I'm merely wondering. I no expertise in this, but I am wondering, is this the strongest that we can do under the laws in terms of protecting downstream and downgrade properties as well as natural ecosystems?
So, I mean, there's two things that kind of work together. I mean, there's the storm drainage systems, the basins, pipes, curbs that carry the water to the treatment devices or the detention, devices. For the drainage system, the pipes and curb inlets, to my best knowledge, there's not a state law that states a minimum or a maximum for that matter. I can tell you the industry standard for a closed drainage system in a street is the Q10 or the 10-year storm flow. That is the standard. And then, as you're suggesting, for if we have, where we have streets that don't have curbs, that have an open drainage network for the pipes that cross the street, that rule of thumb is the Q25 or 25-year storm. And then possibly for outfalls that you described that collect open drainage systems, some of those may approach a 100, like Q100 flow, but that would be somewhat unlikely. So the other thing I'll say is, at the same time, we have applied for a grant under the acronym is LASSI. It's a stormwater, it's part of the ARPA grants, but it's a portion that's been dedicated to stormwater. So we made an application in September to do a watershed master plan. So we're hopeful to be awarded that, and if we are, then we will be doing a watershed master plan that will look at review our stormwater ordinance, review our kind of stormwater best practices, look at more precisely defining our drainage basins, those kind of things.
Good.
So we're very hopeful
Good.
to get that, and if we don't get the grant, then that may very well be a budget request next year.
I think it's serious and I think it's important, and I hope that if we don't get the grant, that we do see that budget request. Because we do have a number of places in town where flooding occurs routinely. And it's a grave and serious concern. I mean, I think we all know that flooding can damage property and kill people, but it's lesser known that floodwaters can be dangerous in terms of the pathogens, and cleaning up from floods can make people sick. So can't thank you so much for your attention to this. I think that my last question would be with regard to the Robeson Creek Watershed Restoration Plan. It's entirely possible that that wasn't brought to your attention. And so I just wanted to make sure that it was brought to your attention, and whether or not that could be incorporated into the stormwater recommendations that you've developed.
So it hasn't been brought forward as intentionally, so to speak. We are aware of that group and those recommendations.
Okay.
As we quickly reviewed them after getting your email, those appear again would be more related to the watershed master plan type of standards,
Okay.
than to these specifications. But noted that, we will incorporate that
Thank
in
you.
future stormwater plans.
Thank you so much.
And John had also asked if this would prevent like construction errors by developers like in Chatham Forest. Does this do that?
I would say yes, it does, in the sense of, I think, number one, I think our inspectors are doing a great job with our new stuff. But I think, yes, in the sense that this formalizes, up to now, the town has not had a set of specifications written for storm drainage installation. So now with the adoption of this, we will have that. So it'll, strengthen what our guys are already doing in the field. So what does that do? It will get incorporated into the construction drawings that we're approving. Things like that. So right now, we reference NCDOT storm drainage details, which are good, but in a lot of cases, they're not really intended for neighborhood type settings where we use it. So,
Great. Thank you.
all right, sure.
So, Mr. Bonitz, I would assume that we need then a motion to approve the storm drainage engineering specifications. Would you be interested in offering that?
Would it necessitate that one item on the imprinting? Would that necessitate you making changes, then bring it back, or?
I think you could we would approve the note. Just add that.
Okay, so moved.
All right. You've heard the motion to approve the storm drainage engineering specifications with an additional note for imprinting or otherwise notifying the general public about the watershed. All right.
And
Is there-
that's on manhole covers for storm drain.
I'll leave it to staff to figure it out because I think that he knows where the infrastructure is going and where it needs to be noted. Where it needs to be visible.
Okay.
Is there a second to Mr. Bonitz's motion?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Shipp. Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Returning to the new business agenda then, the downtown Pittsboro annual work plan. Teresa Thompson is joining us to talk about the plan. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. For those who don't know me, I'm Teresa Thompson, the Director of Downtown Development for the town of Pittsboro. And I just wanted to take a second to recognize some of the members that are associated with downtown Pittsboro. So if you're here tonight and you're associated with the program, please raise your hand. So thank you all so much for taking the time to come out. Tonight I'm going to be presenting the downtown work plan for fiscal year 2023. And that covers the time period between July of 2022 and June of 2023. And next slide, please. So our story started in July. This is when the Board of Commissioners created the Downtown Development Director position, which is me. They also created the Downtown Advisory Board. So that board was an extension of the work that was done with the previous Main Street group. The town became a small town Main Street community in 2011. So this is an extension of the work that's already been done. So in addition to the creation of my position and then also the advisory board, we became a fully designated Main Street community in July as well. So we've been really busy. Statistics were due in July. I was perfectly fine not starting on the work plan right away and starting just to get my feet wet and do a lot of research and on the community and what the needs were. The advisory board definitely had different thoughts in mind. They wanted to get started as soon as possible, which we did. So they would have had it done months ago if we could have made that work. Very excited group, which is great. It's just a lot. It's a lot to keep up with, but having a great time with them. So in July, we started the community input process, same month. And the board completed an extensive questionnaire, a lot of open-ended questions. So one of the questions was, what does the board think downtown needs assistance with most currently? Next slide. The top results were market analysis, business plans, assistance with business recruitments, and creation of a database inventory of businesses. So in July, same month, we met with Mike Doherty. He's a downtown development specialist with the North Carolina Main Street program. He helped us facilitate the work plan process. He conducted the first of 3 visioning workshops with the advisory board. Moving on to August, we held the community vision forum. We had around 90 people show up, including the majority of the board. So thank you so much for those who were able to make that work in your schedule. It was an interactive workshop. We discussed things such as strengths, weaknesses of downtown, economic drivers, thought about economic development strategies, and started thinking about the vision statement itself. The Downtown Advisory Board had 2 additional visioning workshops. We also conducted an online community vision survey, which we received 353 responses. And an overview of the results is in the work plan that was passed out to you tonight. One of the questions the survey asked was to rank the areas of concern from most to least important. So this question results were the most important being attracting new businesses, then more places to shop, more downtown events, more places to sit and socialize, more parking, better walkability, more greenery, bicycle lanes and parking, enhancing our entry corridors, and more attractive building facades. I'd like to note how close everything is in the level of importance. It's not like we see, one or two areas where we just know we need to focus all of our attention. There's a lot to be done in a lot of different areas. So a lot of the results were, very close together. And next slide. So overall, we're looking at 3 focus areas for the work plan. The first is understanding our conditions. That is the input. So that's mostly the community input process that we've gone through. We've listened to the concerns and ideas generated by that process. We started with that because we want to think, why are we doing this, not just how? So we just don't want ideas generated, that's not a bad thing, but you're excited about a certain project in particular, but we're not thinking big picture on what's the result going to be and why are we doing this. So we started with the community input process. After that comes creating the vision and economic development strategies. These should be reevaluated every year and updated every 2 to 5 years, or as needed. And then the third being our impact measurements, the third part of the work plan. So that's the outputs. This is really the action steps. So the last few pages of the work plan that was passed out to you, that's the action steps that were generated through the community input process with the Downtown Advisory Board. So overall, we're looking at how did the action steps help make our vision a reality. Next slide, please. So at the last visioning workshop in August, the Downtown Advisory Board, they read through all the ideas generated through the vision forum, the questionnaire, the vision workshops, and the vision survey. And we finalized the vision statements. The vision statement is defined as the aspirational description of our community. So it's basically, what do we dream downtown to be? The vision statement that we created through community input is encircled by an eclectic and innovative economy and supportive of its rich agricentric heritage. Downtown Pittsboro is a vibrant arts and cultural destination that inspires visitors and brings pride to the community. With its own unique character, downtown Pittsboro is an inclusive and welcoming place for everyone. So again, this should be reevaluated annually, updated every 2 to 5 years. Within the vision statement, we created 3 economic development strategies, which is in bold. So this is what overall we're looking to achieve. This is the why that we're doing all the action steps. And that includes the eclectic and innovative economy, vibrant arts and cultural destination, and inclusive and welcoming place for everyone. We also identified several goals. This is typically going to be more specific measured outcomes. This year, since we're still in the evaluation stage, our goals are a little more generic. They're included in the work plan. But just wanted to note that any ideas that we have, they're not just going to happen. If we have a goal in mind, it needs to be included in the work plan, and there needs to be a lot of hard work that the community puts into creating the work plan and implementing it. So we have lots of helpers in the community, lots of volunteers, staff, and I think there's definitely enough momentum to make the action steps a reality for the town of Pittsboro for this fiscal year. Next slide. So the last section of the work plan is the action steps. So they all fall under one of the 4 points for the Main Street approaches. That is design, promotions, economic vitality, and organization. And each of these are a committee. We have a design committee, promotions committee, economic vitality committee. We decided the organization committee could actually fall under the advisory board. So that responsibility is already designated from the advisory board. It's also really important that we look at the balance of these 4 approaches. We don't want to put too much emphasis on just one. Your most successful communities have a balanced approach for all 4. So just as a recap for the fundamentals of the work plan. So we're looking at why are we doing what we're doing, not just how are we doing it. We want it to be comprehensive, broad-based approach. We want it to be a unified vision of features that includes the community, and it needs to be volunteer driven. So I'm one person, I can only do so much, with my time. So to make these actions a reality, we definitely need the assistance from the volunteers, which we're having a great showing already. We have the 18-member advisory board, and then for each committee, we have between 9 and 12 members. We opened the promotions committee up to the public, and we might, if everybody actually comes and says they're interested in coming, we might have to find a new location. I wasn't expecting that kind of result, but I think we're at 23 people are interested in coming that are not already on the list of people coming. Our downtown office can only fit so many people, but that's a good problem to have. So we want to have all the partners involved, the community and the town as well. This is a town, local government initiated program. So the support from the town board, is vital as well for this program to be successful. And next slide. So just on the next steps, if you read through the action steps, you'll see there's a lot of evaluation type project ideas. Because we're a new program, that makes sense. So with this year's budget, one project idea that I spoke to Chris Kennedy about, the former town manager, was extending the downtown vision plan itself, like creating a strategic plan that originated from that. And this would go hand in hand with the land use plan update that we're currently going through right now. There's a lot of great ideas that have been generated through this process, and Stewart, the consulting group, they're proposing a downtown support area, so lots of new ideas. So we could take the vision plan, which it states in the plan that it was drafted as the initial phase of a larger, more detailed vision plan for downtown Pittsboro. They had limited stakeholder engagement, limited research, and limited site investigations. So we would approach the strategic plan as more detailed, and it would include the advisory board and the committees, would be heavily involved in the project as well. So we also have a full-time staff person. We can make sure that this isn't just going to be a plan that sits on a shelf, that it's something that's going to be implemented. So lastly, I just want to thank everybody for their support. We wanted to include the town board in the decision-making process. I don't think it was technically required, but the advisory board has already approved what we call the draft work plan. So this is the exact same plan that went before them. We just wanted to involve you in the process, see if you had any questions, concerns that we could address. And then if the board wishes to approve the work plan for official adoption of it for this fiscal year. And please let me know if you have any questions.
Questions for Teresa?
Just a couple comments. Appreciate all the work that's been done for sure. And I think like one thing I talked to you about before was the pedestrian scale signage downtown. And I think we need changes to our UDO to allow that. You're saying so. And I noticed one of the items too was like evaluate Greenway and in connections to downtown and things. So just as you go through this work plan, please let us know any changes that we need to make to, you know, bike and ped plan from 2019 to enable that, the UDO to enable other things. We want to make sure that all these things work together, like the land use plan. So please don't hesitate to reach out to us to make the changes that we need to do what we need to do downtown.
And I'm glad you mentioned that. I think you would be definitely involved if we decide to go with this strategic downtown plan. So if we go through that process, it's going to incorporate a lot of these individual action steps that have been thought of. And it's going to include an extension of the scope of work with Stewart that's currently working on the land use plan. And we can look at it from a more comprehensive approach versus trying to piecemeal lots of individual action steps or projects. So we would have the consulting group involved, the advisory board committees, and the town board. And I'm sure we would include the community as well. We've already gone through an extensive community input process, so I don't think we'd have to redo all of that. But I do foresee there being at least one community input session.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Anything else for Teresa? Thank you very much, Teresa.
Thank you. And if the board wished to adopt it tonight, then that would be the motion that staff recommends, just so we can have the official work plan approved. Thank you.
Thank you. What's the pleasure of the board?
I'll make a motion to accept the work plan.
I'll second that.
Moved by Commissioner Shipp, seconded by Commissioner Bonitz. Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries unanimously. Thank you so much. Next item on the agenda is the Chatham Parkway bonus allocation agreement, and Paul Misc will lead us in a discussion of that.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the board. In your agenda package, you have didn't think I needed that. In your agenda package, you have a draft resolution and a draft agreement between the town and Chatham Park with regard to a bonus allocation funding proposal for a portion of Chatham Parkway that is to be constructed north of the US 64 bypass. The state transportation improvement program allows for local contributions to facilitate and reduce road construction costs for the state. You approved a similar project that was done in 2020 for another portion of the street of Chatham Parkway south of the bypass. The developer has provided another memorandum that's in more detailed than mine, and they are present in person and on Zoom to give you more information and discuss with you the ramifications of the proposal. Let me hand a map, because sometimes a picture is 1,000 words.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is Mr. Eric Vernon and Mr. David Mason. Stephen Perry is on the Zoom.
Thank you, Mr. Misc. Members of the board, staff, it's a pleasure to be here. My name is Eric Vernon. I represent Chatham Park Investors. I'm with the law firm of Wyrick, Robbins, Yates and Ponton in Raleigh. It's been my honor and pleasure to be the town attorney for the town of Zebulon since 2009 and Wake Forest since 1991. I appreciate Mr. Messick letting me cross over into his jurisdiction. I'm here to talk to you about a state Department of Transportation program that allows for the acceleration of state roads upon the payment of a local contribution. That program allows not only the acceleration of construction of a new road, but it also provides a credit in the form of an amount that's 50% of the local contribution that can then be reimbursed for additional roads. So in a way, it's kind of a 2-for-1 program. Mr. Messick mentioned that the board approved a similar bonus allocation in August of 2020. This particular section of road of Chatham Parkway is identified by the State Transportation Improvement Plan number R5930. R5930 has been on the radar for the town of Pittsboro for a long time. In a letter dated November 28, 2018, exactly 4 years ago today, the town of Pittsboro sent a letter expressing support for the bonus allocation program for 5930 to the Triangle J Council of Governments and the Triangle Area Rural Planning Organizations in an attempt to draw wide support from the region for this project. They were rewarded with 5930 being made an eligible project. And we are here today to talk about how Chatham Park investors will pay $9 million as the local contribution on behalf of the town. In exchange for that, we ask that the town serve as a conduit, if you will, for not only the funds that are going to be paid to Department of Transportation so that they can construct this on an accelerated basis, but also the right of way that would be contributed and the value of that right of way would count towards the local contribution. In exchange for that, Chatham Park investors would be able to draw down on a credit of $4,500,000, 50% of the $9 million contribution for construction of additional roads. So the result is not only the construction of these new roads, but also by reducing pressure in the existing transportation system. As I've experienced in the communities that I've represented, as a general rule, the growth exceeds the ability of a local government to provide for transportation infrastructure. And this is one way to accomplish the goals of supporting the new development of Chatham Park investors, while at the same time providing benefits to the citizens of the town of Pittsboro in the form of reduced pressure on your existing transportation system.
Mr. Vernon, one question.
Yes, sir.
You just mentioned the about a paragraph back, maybe regarding the additional 4.5 million would go to additional roads
That's
that
correct.
belong to Chatham Park.
Yes, sir. That's correct.
Okay.
They would have to be state maintained roads. But the right of way
Okay.
would be either controlled or owned by Chatham Park investors. That's correct.
Okay.
Yes, sir. That was a perfect segue. Now I have to jump over to my next paragraph because that's exactly what I was getting ready to say. But this would
I didn't
all-
want you to go too fast. I'm a little slow, but I'm getting it there.
It's okay.
A lot of information.
It is, it's very complex,
Mhm.
and you have stacks of documents, memos, agreements, and a resolution there in front of you to work through. My goal here is not to make it more complicated, but to actually try and simplify it for them
Right.
down to the basics. So in summary, this would provide great opportunity, not only for Chatham Park investors, but all of the citizens of the town of Pittsboro. We think that it's a project that is well conceived. It's a state supported project that allows us to get things done more quickly than you would if you were just to wait for the standard state transportation improvement program to take its place. You have the maps where it is. 5/9/30 project is in the United States, but the northern side, although it doesn't go all the way to 501. It stops about 400 feet with Grant Road. And then the 5963 project comes all the way down here. So one portion of 5930, another portion of 5930. I'd be happy to take any questions you have. Once you get on to the business.
Yes, sir. If you wouldn't mind, now your map there does not show the reconnection. Some people to 15501 South. And that's because we're not talking about that tonight, right?
Thank you for that clarification. That's exactly right.
So you mentioned that your support, you'd mentioned in 2018, the matter before this this board, some of whom have changed in the meantime, but some of whom remember quite well that meeting that night. And the letter, it was a very extensive conversation that night. I was here then, and there was no question but that the board wanted to support a road of this sort for a variety of reasons. But the matter of the credit, as you call it, the bonus allocation of $4.5 million, quite frankly, was never approved at that meeting. And that's what you're asking for tonight. So there's been a long chain of discussion about the $4.5 million, partly because I believe that the statute itself contemplates local governments doing these road improvements and not developers. Would you agree with that statement?
The statute absolutely contemplates local government. In fact, it is required.
It is required, yeah.
Local government.
So us acting as a conduit is a little bit of an unusual situation. So the developer is contemplating advancing the 9 million less the value of the right of way that they're contributing. And so for the last since 2018, there has been discussion on this board about how or to whom the $4.5 million would be credited. The town of Pittsboro has a tremendous number of needs, as far as its roadways are concerned, and I think it's interesting that this credit, in essence, really represents a convenience to and a part of the design of Chatham Park for the PDD. In many respects, it doesn't improve the downtown area or the town of Pittsboro, what I would call legacy Pittsboro. So it's not a fait accompli. It's a question before the board tonight as to how this bonus allocation would work. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vernon and Mayor Perry, for queuing up this issue. As I prepared to consider this bonus allocation, I remembered back in 2020 when I spoke very heartfelt way about the matter at that time. there were some things that I didn't say then that I would like to say now. In his interview, our last manager, Chris Kennedy, said to us, development should pay for itself. And I believe that. And I believe that this is kind of turning that on its head, that truism. Somehow, it's been suggested to me that this is an entitlement, that the $4.5 million should go back to the Chatham Park investors. I believe that your company needs this road. I believe that the town of Pittsboro needs you to complete this road. And because of our entwined destinies, I am concerned about your success, but I'm even more concerned about the profound needs and rotting infrastructure in the rest of the town. And we have long contemplated, since before 2018, a road widening and improvement on Highway 87. That was the original idea, to get truck traffic out of downtown, out of the traffic circle, away from the courthouse. And somehow it got removed from the STIP list, the prior NCDOT's prioritization list. And that greatly concerns me. It still concerns me that that's an existing need. Even once Chatham Parkway North and Chatham Parkway South are completed, we will still have traffic that needs to come through downtown because it needs to go to the west. And for that reason, and also traffic that comes from the west to the south, we need to improve Highway 87. We need to improve Highway 87 because not just for the trucks, but the people and increasing populations on that side of town need bike paths or multi-use paths and sidewalks. And so it's not a fait accompli for me to agree to this bonus allocation to go to new additional roads that are, I mean, at this point, we're hearing that it might be Eubanks Road or Eubanks Road Extension, or the other road that escapes me. Thank you, Suttles. I don't think either of those are STIP eligible at this point, but NC 87 is most surely STIP eligible for the prioritization list for the public's benefit, because it's already been on the prioritization list. So we're being asked to allocate NCDOT bonus funds for road projects that aren't yet STIP eligible. I'm very uncomfortable with this whole matter. And I think we need to table this and give it a much deeper consideration. I think we need to have a workshop on it. And I'll ask if there are others on the board who would like to say their piece tonight.
Well, I will mention that I did have a few questions regarding this. I appreciate your presentation, Eric. My concern was also with Mr. Bonitz regarding the 87 STIP on that. And I did have a question here, if I can find it, regarding why did the Eubanks Road and the Suttles Road was the only two roads mentioned as a possible payment on the bonus allocation? I mean, do we not have other roads, or do we need to even mention these roads in this agreement?
The suggestion of Eubanks Road, the Suttles Road, was a reflection of the evolution of the Chatham Park development. In 2020, it was much more speculative. And now there are greater indicators of where the development is going to be. And although we suggested Eubanks Road and Suttles Road as examples of the types of road, they were not meant to be exclusive, nor were they meant to be commitments to do those two roads specifically. There are more examples of the type of road and the way that we see the development heading at this time, which is a lot more defined than it was in 2020. To answer your question, we could take them out. The key element here is that Chatham Park would own or control the right of way, whatever road it would be. And it would have to be STIP eligible for purposes of bonus allocation. So those are the two things that are critical. It can't be just some neighborhood road.
Right, but the Eubanks Road and Suttles Road are not STIP eligible, right?
The Eubanks Road, I believe, is. The Suttles Road, I'm uncertain about that. I know it's a state maintained, so it definitely could be eligible on that basis. I also know that Chatham Park either owns or controls the area adjacent to Suttles for purposes of additional right of way, bike lanes, paths, and kind of thing. So it would make it Chatham Park could actually deliver on its promise to provide the road right of way for whatever bonus allocation roads used.
I think my heartburn here is, admittedly, I've not been here long, but this has come up twice over the last year. And each time it's come up, it has been presented to me and I think us in such a way that it was a foregone conclusion. And everything had been put in place, and this is what we were doing, and it has already been agreed to. But then it's spoken to in multiple people from the Department of Transportation to Triangle JCOG, I believe, to yourself and a previous board member, all remember it quite differently. So for me, I would like a little bit of time to understand the provenance of the money and what we're giving away and whose it really is. Because I don't think it's been stated clearly up until this point.
Well, I would suggest that the contribution of $9 million is committed by Chatham Park investors.
And that part is very clear.
They would definitely. The Department of Transportation has agreed to construct that section of Chatham Parkway. That is also agreed.
Because, if I
the
may,
amount of the bonus allocation is fixed by law at $4,500,000. So in a lot of ways, the project has been vetted. It's gone through proper state authorities. We work closely with the town staff to develop a bonus allocation agreement for this most recent project. It's very similar to the one that was approved in 2020. So if there was some implication that this was a done deal and that we knew how the board was going to vote, that's absolutely not the case. But if what you heard was a reflection of the fact that we've really done our homework, yeah, we've really done it. So accept that part.
So let me ask you one question or make one comment in reference to this. From what Commissioner Farrell was stating about the Suttles Road, and it does seem as if that is a foregone conclusion that that would be one of the roads, because it's just written in here about STIP project R5930 is identified as a section of Chatham Parkway, so forth and so on. and preliminary engineering on this project is underway with the right-of-way acquisition activities scheduled to begin before the end of calendar year 2022. So it seems to me that that Suttles Road is one of those places that is definitely to be done. So I don't understand, seems like we're getting incomplete or contradictory information in reference to that. If that is not one of the roads, you said that's just an example. So why are we putting Suttles Road in? Why not just use one of the other roads within the town of Pittsboro? I do agree. I think we need to look at this a little closer and basically discuss it. The board, us as a board needs to discuss this with our attorney, with our town manager, and get actually a clear understanding of exactly what is being asked or proposed in this particular agreement here, because we definitely do need to get a better understanding of this.
Yes, ma'am. Suttles Road and Eubanks Road, I think it's fair to say, are more than examples. They are likely. The engineering and the right-of-way acquisition that is underway today has not been focused on Eubanks or Suttles Road. It's been focused on the R5930 section. So that's where the activity is been. And that is the part that we've done our homework. Bonus allocation is the second step in the process. It's what you do with the credit that state law provides you. And that's where we have tried to be more forthcoming on where the likelihood of that $4.5 million spent. What additional roads might it be? And we identified Eubanks and Suttles as in good faith to try and show where our crystal ball is showing us the likelihood of that, those next projects, and the likelihood of being able to construct roads within a 5-year time frame, because you have to do it within 5 years, and where the development opportunities are presenting themselves for Chatham Park right now. So those would be, given the type of development interest that's been shown in Chatham Park, those would be likely roads. They're state maintained. Eubanks is STIP eligible. Suttles Road has the benefit of being adjacent to property that's owned or controlled by CPI. And so these are projects that are in the horizon, next 5-year time horizon that we have now, that would be likely. So the first part is getting $4.5 million bonus allocation to begin with. And I would suggest that that is very much a done deal, that is something that we have lined up. We've taken great care to comply with all of the plans and wishes of the town has been expressed in the past. And this bonus allocation program, a state program, allows us to take advantage of an additional $1.5 million grant for additional roads that would improve the transportation system for the entire town. So that's how we see it as a benefit for everyone.
But I've got to note that on August 1st of 2018, Department of Transportation Secretary Trogdon told Mayor Perry that the bonus allocation was the town's money for the town board to allocate among needed highway projects.
Absolutely. Yes, sir. And I would suggest that if the town paid the $9 million of local contribution.
I understand right from wrong. I get what you're saying there. I just don't know that it's our money to just give away. That's what I'm asking. I'm asking more than I'm stating.
Well, the characterization of giving it away is one way to look at it. Another way to look at it is once that $4.5 million is credited and is on the accounts of DOT, CPI then has to come and spend additional money and construct the additional road at its cost. And the $4.5 million is credit after that additional road has been built after those costs have been incurred. And we submit vetted numbers to the town saying, okay, here's what we spent. And we're entitled to take back all our part of 4.5 million. Based
I
on
guess
the
that's what I have
road.
trouble with is, are you entitled? I don't know that answer.
Well,
You know, in many
under this
respects,
agreement- Under this agreement, yes, sir, the way the agreement is drafted. No, it would have to serve the entire town. It would have to be to the benefit of the citizens of Pittsburgh. That's required by statute. It says it has to serve the town. So I believe that this could be a win for the entire town.
So that's the only word I'm
Chatham
trying
Park
to.
not excluded.
well, and that sort of brings back to thought, the fact that, you know, as we, the board, have brought in each new section of Chatham Park, we have, for the most part, brought them in, annexed them into the town. And so, what is, it just seems totally inappropriate to be continuing to talk about allocation going to areas that are only Chatham Park related, when this town has a multitude of needs and a multitude of other roads on which the town would benefit just as every bit as much, if not more, than Chatham Parkway. Which also feeds back into the idea that this was really intended to be a local government oriented statute. In reading over the statute, I was struck by the number of times it recited local government. And it was, in this case, we're the local government, and we are relegated to status as a conduit between Chatham Park and the Department of Transportation, without any say-so, without any direction or contribution to where it is that we feel that the population of Pittsboro would most benefit. So that's what's disturbing me. And when I was in that meeting with Secretary Trogdon, granted, back in a past era, he looked at us and said, well, both roads could be, we can make both roads come to fruition. Well, now we seem to be in competition with Chatham Park instead of in cooperation with Chatham Park, which is regrettable, but we need to understand how all of this fits, how it keys in to our futures. And there's another factor here, which has not been mentioned, and that is we're going to soon have a mega site over in the area of the eastern part of our county, the southeastern part. And there's going to be truck traffic and construction traffic and traffic conveying the products of the mega site all around Chatham County and all around the town of Pittsboro. One of the things we're trying to prevent at this point is the degradation of our roads right through the middle of town by trucks, which are stone trucks coming from the quarry, which are dump trucks going out to Chatham Park for construction. And now we're going to have trucks from the mega site as well, which makes it even more compelling to have proper roads that are appropriate for trucks and appropriate for the transportation of important materials for the economy of our county. So I appreciate what the board is struggling with tonight, because I've struggled with it since 2018.
I think a couple couple changes I'd like to see. I'll start with it and then back up a little bit, but I think as we discussed tonight, like removing those examples, I think we should do as they're just examples. And they're not compelling to either party. So I think that would simplify things a lot. And I think you've said a few times that assuming this agreement was in place, the roads that the bonus allocation would be used on would be totally would be built on land that is totally owned or controlled by Chatham Park. Is that
That's
correct?
There would be no eminent domain, there would be no involuntary taking. It would be all based on Chatham Park's control and ownership. It's absolutely correct.
Okay, so to me, and I'm not a lawyer, but it's not that clear to me in the agreement. I would like to make that more clear in the agreement that any of these roads would be built on for the bonus allocation. They would be built on, would need no other right of way from any other person, I guess, or entity. And then kind of thinking back to the acceleration we did for Chatham Park South, there's a provision in there to reimburse the town for costs that the town had related to this, the legal fees and whatever is required with DOT and those things. I guess in addition to the $9 million being offered, I would also ask that Chatham Park reimburses the town specifically for any cost associated with this program. Because we'll have some staff time, we would have some, attorney time and different things associated with this.
Let me just summarize that. Number one, that all of the land would be on Chatham Park owned or controlled land. Yes, sir. We can commit to that. We can make that absolutely clear if it's not clear enough in there now. Number two, we're happy to remove Eubanks and Sons. I will say that our intention there was to try and bring better focus to the types of roads that might be considered. And it was intended to be a benefit to the board in their deliberations. We're happy to take it out. It certainly isn't a commitment by either side. And then third, the issue of reimbursing the town for its expenses. Absolutely happy to do that. We did it for the 5963 reimbursement project. We're happy to just take that language straight out of the other agreement and put it in. So all three of its states. And if I may take a moment to address one matter that the mayor brought up. I would suggest that Chatham Park is ready to cooperate with the town any way it can. I think it has demonstrated the willingness to cooperate and develop a project that takes into consideration the best interests for the citizens of the town of Pittsboro. It will continue to do so. We would never see ourselves as being in competition with the town or its other interests. It's absolutely a cooperative effort on the part. As far as Highway 87 goes, the DOT explained to us past spring that they were reprioritizing all of the budgets throughout the entire state. They had outspent their budget, and consequently, they had to give priority to projects that had federal funding. And there were several projects that fell off. Why? And if Chatham Park can help in getting Highway 87 back on the STIP eligible projects, we'd be happy to offer our assistance in doing
it. Thank you. A couple of, and I totally agree. We need to discuss this as a board, with council, with our town manager. I think it's great that we're all here tonight to do that. And question for Mr. Misc, with the agreements that we have in place right now, I think for this project, we have the letter of support from 2018, but do we have any way to compel Chatham Park to give us this $9 million?
This $9 million?
Yes.
No, sir.
Okay. That's what I thought. But so, I mean, in 2018, the town agreed to support this project with an agreement pending about the bonus allocation. And so then from 2018 until now, the DOT scored this project based on a contribution from the town of Pittsboro for $9 million. And it's been scored that way through, and that's how the plans have gone through. Currently, we don't have any way to provide that $9 million for this project that we agreed to. And that letter from Brian at the time said that agreement would take place in the next few months. Obviously, that didn't happen. So the way I look at this is a developer has agreed to give the town $9 million to build roads in the town of Pittsboro. And their request is that the $4.5 million rebate that comes back is used for roads in the PDD or controlled by Chatham Park. It's 100% our decision to make what happens with that money. Once the developer gives us the $9 million, we give it to DOT. DOT does, goes through their process, checks everything, and then gives the town $4.5 million back. It's absolutely up to us what to do with that. But we don't have that money, and we don't have any way to compel to give that money. So it's a negotiation of what happens with that. And this arrangement is exactly what we agreed to in 2020 for the other section shown. I think it's black dashed here. And I know there was that was not unanimous. But I think that if we want Chatham Park to help us improve 87, we should talk to them about that sort of separately from this deal. This is an arrangement they're offering to help us make good on our arrangement that we paper arrangement we have with DOT. And I think he said they're willing to help us do things. We also recently, I think back in 2018 or back a few months ago, we thought that 87 had to be improved to become a truck route. Now we know that that's not the case. And we've asked for it to be a truck route. Certainly 87 still needs to be improved. But a lot of what we were going on at the time, a lot of what we were talking about earlier this year was based on information that 87 could not be a truck route. And now we know that it could, I guess, as is. So a lot of those concerns about traffic out of town, getting trucks out of downtown and all those things, we may be able to resolve that with the resolution that we did last meeting or meeting before. So I think this is an opportunity for the town to take, and we certainly don't have to agree to take. And I went back multiple times and listened to the 2018 audio, and there was a lot of good questions. That the projects for the $4.5 million don't have to score well; they just have to be on the STIP. So that's a difference of essentially how we've been trying to get 87 funded, is that it needed to score well because we weren't contributing anything to the project. But it does need to be a project that can be accomplished with the money that's given back. So it's got to be a project that's $4.5 million or less, or we've got to contribute the rest of it for it to happen. And if we go sort of the other way, we don't agree to do this, then DOT would rescore the project based on having no local contribution, and this project would likely fall out of the STIP with no local contribution. So the work that had been done over the last 4 years based on this agreement that we were going to provide $9 million to DOT would probably go away if we don't have the $9 million to provide DOT for that.
Kyle, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think there's any document anywhere that says that the town of Pittsboro is giving $9 million to NCDOT for this project. I think that the agreement is between Chatham Park investors and NCDOT. And Chatham Park investors is making the investment of $9 million in roads that they need. Will Heather Meacham ever receive a check for $9 million? Ms. Hazy,
Have we?
will we?
No, sir, you will get a deed for the right of way of this road. That's gonna
Understood.
Be worth $2 million.
Understood.
Then you'll get the balance with the check that you will transmit to DOT. So it becomes a local contribution from the town to DOT.
So
for
there
which-
will be actual funds deposited into the town coffers.
That's what the agreement says.
Okay,
It has to be. That's the only way.
all right.
Chatham Park cannot give DOT money directly
All
for
right.
this program.
Fundamentally, I agree with most of what you're saying. And to me, it seemed pretty simple at first, right? And some of it still does. But when I keep coming back to things like July 20th, 2018, Jeff Jones, Brandon Jones, NCDOT, they said that the money could be used for Highway 87 widening. And then I see that the thing that I mentioned earlier, that it was purely up to the town to decide, town board to decide where the money went. The issue I have trouble with is when the other side of the room is saying that it is going fundamentally and directly to Chatham Park. The two statements just seem at odds with each other. So that's what I wanted to talk about tonight.
This agreement is your decision on what to do with it.
It's 100% up to us. I mean, it has to be used for state roads in Pittsboro. We can't use it for affordable housing or police cars or anything else. It has to be used in state roads in Pittsboro. What Chatham Park is asking is that we use it for state roads that are on that will be built on property controlled by them versus somewhere else in the town of Pittsboro. So it'll all be
So then
roads
my ask
in
would be, if
Pittsburgh.
we don't like that, where would we put them? What would be the pleasure of the board? These specific dollars with roads that are already on the STIP right now. Do we have an answer to that?
Highway 87 improvement, modernization of Highway 87 was previously on the STIP.
And is it enough money to cover that project?
No, but it's enough to show NCDOT good faith interest and to probably reprioritize it.
Those are my questions.
But without this agreement, we don't have money to imagine what we would use it for. So it's,
The Chatham Park investors are going to get that road built. That's a certainty. I have every confidence in the world that they're going to get that road built.
Already cleared the land. It's under.
We've already been through that miserable experience with the Northwoods neighborhood. They're going to get this road built. So.
So basically, the bonus allocation can only be used for STIP eligible projects that Chatham Park and the town of Pittsboro agrees upon
correct.
To be completed within 5 years.
to be completed.
Well, the bonus allocation can be used on STIP eligible projects that the town of Pittsboro agrees with.
And it says Chatham Park investors do.
This agreement, right? But the bonus allocation program,
Is for the
Doesn't-
town of Pittsboro.
yes, but this agreement is what ties us to the preferences of
To
Chatham.
using it for this
Correct.
particular project. Mhm.
I'm still not understanding why it is that that all the additional roads have to have the control of the right of way by Chatham Park. Could you explain that to me?
Yes, ma'am. First of all, it accelerates the process because Chatham Park controls or owns those roads. You don't have to try and negotiate the acquisition of right of way from third parties, so you get it faster. Second of all, it eliminates the need to go through the eminent domain process that DOT might go through for involuntary taking. We, as Chatham Park, commit to providing that right of way in advance. And so it's already there. Faster, less controversial, and you get the additional roads constructed. Keep in mind, just allocating the 4.5 million to a different road than what Chatham Park might suggest is only part of the process. You have to spend that money first in order to be eligible for the reimbursement. So let's just say, for example, that you had $4,500 of the credit. The town would then have to go and spend the money on another loan in order to be eligible to get it. And in this case, it's very likely that it would involve acquisition of right of way from third parties. It would be a cost in order to complete even a phase of the project that's far in excess of $4,500,000. So you'd have to spend more. With CPI, Chatham Park investors making the commitment to build roads that serve not only Chatham Park, but also the entire town of Pittsboro. They will pay the additional amount that it takes to complete those additional roads. They will be able to do that on the strength of having a $4.5 million credit that they can get afterwards. So there's a fairly substantial commitment from Chatham Park investors, not only in the $9 million to begin with, but when it comes to the additional road, the obligation to build it, pay for it, and what they get back is a $4,500,000 credit. That's fixed. The amount of the cost of building the road is not fixed. So this is a substantial contribution and substantial commitment from Chatham Park investors. And I suggest it benefits the entire town.
But they also get to deduct the value of the right of way. So it's not really 9 million, it's really 7 million. And as each section is completed and as the development achieves more of its goals and plans, it seems as though the cost of the right of way will increase. And it's sort of like feathering their own nest to be able to offset the cost of the right of way against the actual amount of construction.
The value of the right of way is determined by DOT appraisal rules. So that value is determined by independent third-party appraiser. And there's no additional benefit to Chatham Park. This is value of land is determined by a third-party appraisal. It's needed to build a road. And I think that's in the interest of the entire town. The road gets built. Faster the road gets built, I think it's even better for the town. Which is why this program is there to begin with. It's a state program. Many communities have used exactly this system where a private developer has made the contribution on behalf of the local government. It's not unusual at all for that to happen. I'm curious, and I haven't done a study of it, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if it's more often that a private developer provides a local contribution from the local government. And it certainly would be true in smaller communities that have smaller budgets.
I think it was mentioned about development paying for itself. I think this is an example of how that happens partially. And then Mayor, you had also mentioned about where the development would happen, you know, in the future, or where we as a board think the development will happen in regards to investing in Highway 87 and things like that. But our reality that we know from sewer capacity is that the near-term development will happen in the PDD of Chatham Park, because we don't have sewer capacity for development to happen elsewhere. So, I mean, that's a separate topic that we had at the workshop, but it is the reality that there won't be any development anywhere else in town in the short term, because there's no sewer to do it. So, and we're working on that. Don't worry. But that is where development will happen.
I guess.
But we have impacts from this development far beyond the quarter mile outside of the PDD.
Mhm.
we have impacts from this development throughout the community, all the way across town, including on Highway 87. And my concern has been that the master plan only obliges Chatham Park to study traffic impacts a quarter of a mile outside their boundaries. They literally embrace the town on many sides of the town. So there's clearly impacts beyond that. And we're left with nothing to address those needs, those highway improvement needs. We don't have the resources. The town does not have the resources. And it seems to me that this bonus allocation rule and the state code is set up for this situation, for the local government to receive funds to be applied in the form of a credit to NCDOT projects that benefit the town. That's Highway 87. And in no imaginable future, in my mind, do I see Chatham Park investors walking away from this project and not building their road. So I don't find it plausible that this is not going to happen, that $4.5 million wouldn't be available for NCDOT related projects that the town board chooses.
But if it became ours right now, is there such a thing as a good faith bucket with the DOT? Could we put it in that bucket and wait for them to have more money for 87? Or are we, I believe you said that money would have to be spent within 5 years?
That's correct, under the statutory,
Yeah.
law, it has to be spent within 5 years.
So like,
But the other point I think I need to raise is there is no $4.5 million unless Chatham Park makes the $9 million.
puts the 9 up.
Initial contribution. There is no $4.5 million. Put on the
Do you imagine that your company will not build that road?
But that doesn't give $4.5 million worth of bonus allocation. It only works if we give $9 million through the town as a company, and then bonus allocation comes into play. If Chatham Park were to construct the roads on its own nickel, there would be no $4.5 million bonus allocation at all, zero, none.
So the STIP process is a prioritization process that involves local contributions. Those local contributions have to be legally promised. And based on those promises, correct me if I'm wrong, the NCDOT then prioritizes the projects. And this particular project was prioritized because of the commitments that you made with NCDOT and with communications to this town, which were not responded to very wholeheartedly in 2018. The board, in my absence, I would note, did not give the manager approval to respond in the way that Mr. Smith asked the board to respond. So you have a commitment to build the road. If you withdraw that $9 million, the road is reprioritized. And I don't think that you can take that. I don't think that's a scenario your company would want to entertain.
I'm not an expert on DOT grading, but the fact that the Chatham Parkway was prioritized as a STIP project had less to do with bonus allocation than perhaps you're attributing to. The bonus allocation is a completely separate type of measure. It's not the same thing as being eligible for STIP inclusion when you're competing against all of the projects across the entire state. That's a different type of measure than what gets approved for bonus allocation. So the A to B type of connection between the Chatham Parkway being a STIP eligible and the $9 million local contribution, I would suggest that that's not a direct connection.
Okay.
Well, you're making it a direct connection by requiring that the $4.5 million go back into an area which again benefits Chatham Park investors, wherein they own all of the right of way, wherein they all, it would continue to connect aspects of Chatham Park. And so really, in a sense, you're trying to separate the two, but the two are really quite clearly merged together. Otherwise, I don't think we'd be talking about it tonight.
They're connected much as Chatham Park is connected to the town of Pittsboro. This is a project that's been zoned, it's been approved, it's taken years and years of hard work.
Yes, we've been here all through that. Yes, we have.
And, so, yeah, I would not try to separate the town of Pittsboro from Chatham Park in any way. In fact, quite the opposite. My suggestion is that they are in fact linked, and that the additional new road infrastructure that Chatham Park would construct benefits all of the citizens of the town of Pittsboro, including the citizens that live in Chatham Park and the ones that are the legacy. We build new roads, it takes pressure off of the old roads. It helps expand the transportation infrastructure. It's just a benefit for all of the citizens, and that's how we look at it. We see this as not separate. The separation I was trying to discuss with the commissioner was a separation between the grading for STIP projects on a statewide basis versus the STIP eligibility in a bonus application situation. Those aren't different.
Mr. Vernon, one question. The $9 million contribution. Is it always the bonus allocation, always half of the contribution?
Under this particular state program, yes, sir, it is.
And this would be statewide, correct? I mean,
Yeah, anybody
okay.
that operates under 136-189-11, those are always 50% reimbursement.
Okay,
Credits.
right.
You
Okay.
still have to build the additional room, and you still have to show that you spent that money.
And are you aware, you said this has been used in a lot of other municipalities. Are you aware of any others where a developer provided the money to the municipality and then the municipality used the rebate money, the return for another project or a different project?
I am, but I don't recall the names of those communities right off the top of my head. I'd be happy to get you that information.
Okay.
Well, Commissioner Shipp, if you had, you said a few minutes ago that you had reviewed a number of times the YouTube play of the 2018 discussion.
Correct.
And in that recording, a member of the DOT, I believe, comes on and talks about how unusual this is, the format. And I wish I could remember the exact words he used, but that this was a very unusual circumstance. It was not the way things normally worked. And my understanding of what he was saying was that most of the time it is a local government and not a developer. So
Providing the money, you're saying.
that provided the money.
Correct,
Yeah.
correct. And I think that's, and that is how it works, that the local government provides the money. The difference here is where we get that money from that we don't have. And I think that was Jeff Jones, the former planner, that was saying this was an unusual arrangement.
Well, I'm encouraged by those people who have spoken tonight who think that a work session or a more in-depth review of where we are, how we got here, and where we need to go, I think that's very encouraging, because if we don't, we're going to have a very similar discussion. And it won't be to the benefit of anybody when looking at the southern part. You're shaking your head.
The southern part is a different program. So there's 100% reimbursement for the developer, and it's not a decision of the town board.
So the
We've agreed to
21,
that
the
already.
21 million that Chatham Park talks about on the southern part of the, that's being done by the state, and the state will not involve Chatham Park in that.
I think it's even more than that, but it's a similar pass-through arrangement that we've already approved, but it's 100% reimbursement
With the town.
back to Chatham Park with the town in the middle. We approved it earlier this year.
Yes, that's correct. Bushel. It was approved earlier. It's a different program. It's 100% reimbursement program. Another very important difference is Chatham Park is going to be managing the construction of that under DOT supervision and review, as opposed to DOT constructing, which is what would happen on 590.
And so that project acceleration is one it's very much, very clear to me, having lived here for more than a decade, that will benefit the town, because that's actually going to remove traffic from the town circle. This project won't remove traffic from the town circle or the other parts of current town limits other than the PDD. But I do want to say, Mr. Vernon, that I very much appreciate your demeanor, your efforts, your words. And you say that you want to be cooperative, and I hear that and I believe that. And this is a refreshing change. And I heard you say or suggest that perhaps you could even help get Highway 87 back on the STIP. That's marvelous. That's wonderful.
Anything we could to assist the town. in
I-
These kinds of common goals.
I'm encouraged by this exchange. I'm also still concerned and still have questions that are stewing and not yet able to be articulated, but I recommend that we table this with a definition until January 23rd. With a closed session or a workshop on January 9th. That will give us time with a new manager to dive into this. And will give all of us time to understand the complexities better.
Well, I'm sorry, can you give me the dates again?
Table until January 23rd. With a workshop or a closed session on January 9th.
Thank you.
What would the closed session be about? Or what would be the justification for the closed session?
Consultation with our attorney about legal matters.
If it's this agreement, this is a public issue, not a legal issue. This is a policy decision for you on that. But I'll be glad to talk to you about any other attorney-client matters.
Well, you did make things clearer with the questions that you answered, and thank you for that. But it seems to me that the bottom line is $9 million donation from Chatham Park, and we get a bonus allocation of $4,500,000. And my only problem is that there has to be, according to this agreement, there should be an agreement between the town of Pittsboro and Chatham Park investors as to where you're going to use that bonus allocation. And I really think it should be used in other portions other than Chatham Park. That's my main concern.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Appreciate
I'll
it.
just make one comment. $4.5 million isn't gonna go very far on any kind of roads in Pittsboro or the county, in our ETJ. We're $4.5 million is not going nowhere with the cost of everything is, so. I don't particularly want, I'm not in favor of having another work session. If we've got more questions, we need to bring them to the table now. And I've done a lot of reading today, and I feel pretty comfortable with this 9 million, other than what we can do with the 44.5 bonus allocation. But I'm pretty much thanking Chatham Park for this $9 million to move forward this road.
I'm grateful for the 9 million. I think I'm fundamentally probably okay with it going back to Chatham Park, but I don't think I like being told that it needs to go back or it must go back when every bit of verbiage that I read says that it's our decision. So I think we should have some say on where it's going to go, but if we don't have an answer to where it goes, then I don't know that we really have anything to say.
May I offer a suggestion?
Please do.
For its consideration. We have already committed to make certain changes to the agreement. And what I would like to offer is an opportunity to make the changes that we've already committed to and address other more global concerns and ask for a spot on your December agenda, if you would consider that. I believe we would be able to have information, changes to the agreement that we would have to make anyway, and committed to make, and a chance to address the questions. So that would be my request of the board. I'm not sure exactly when your December meeting is. I know you only have one.
The 12th. The 12th. Mhm.
So if we could request that of this board, if you consider it, we would sure appreciate it.
Mr. Vernon, I hear your request and I appreciate the give and take. But that won't allow a new manager to get up to speed. And we're about to hire a new manager. And I very much would like the new manager to get up to speed on this issue and us address it in January. So the motion is on the table. Are there other pros and cons for the motion?
Yeah, I would say that in January, I don't think it's likely that we'll have a new manager in place potentially, and definitely not up to speed on this issue. We've reviewed a lot of the history, tonight going back. Potentially the candidates are listening in. But after we do interviews on Wednesday, we'll make an offer, they accept an offer, employment agreement, 30-day notice, holidays. Like, I don't think, hopefully that timeline is close, but I don't think it's gonna be enough time to get up to speed on a particular issue. And we have an interim manager. We have a lot of experience on this board and we need to make decisions. I think fundamentally the decision is Chatham Park is offering to give us $9 million if we agree that the rebate goes back to a specific part of Pittsboro. And the alternative that it seems like on the table is give us $9 million to use somewhere else that we haven't identified. And I think the third alternative is that we don't get that the town does not get $9 million or $4.5 million back out of it. And I think you're right, John, the road will get built. The state will build the road. The state will continue the connection of Chatham Parkway North and I don't think Chatham Parkway South does a lot for the rest of Pittsboro without Chatham Parkway North being completed. But not much. I mean, that's what we've been talking about with Chatham Parkway North, that it doesn't really help without the south portion. So all of this entire road is integral, I think, to the success of Pittsboro. And I guess if there was a specific ask of Chatham Park in a way to modify this agreement, I mean, I've brought up some small things about the administrative fees, but you know, if there's an ask on the table, Chatham Park gives us $9 million. Town of Pittsboro keeps $2 million for some project. I don't know what that is. And then we give you, you know, a portion back. If there's an offer like that, I think that's something, I don't know if they would consider it or not, but I just don't know what else there is to have a workshop about, because they've provided an agreement to us that's been contemplated for over 4 years now. And I think any delay on our part will delay the project and, you know, cause some confusion with DOT and things like that. But I don't think the project will still happen. We would just lose out on additional money and additional time.
There is a timing issue, commissioners. DOT has put a deadline of January 2023 on being able to go forward. It involves their processes for advertising, letting of contracts in order to enter into contracts by May of 2023. In other words, in this fiscal year. So the issue of the delay is one thing, and then of course the uncertainty as to what happens going forward is another. People's business needs to take the time that it takes, and I appreciate that. But I did want you to be aware that there is a timing issue. So the December meeting, if you're willing to consider that, would allow us to at least have hope of achieving the DOT deadline.
And I think that's reasonable in the long scope of things, and that on November 28th of 2018, this board, or I guess on the 26th, this board told the manager to write a letter to DOT that said that we would provide $9 million for this project, and we would have an agreement in the next few months. And we don't have an agreement to this day. So I think it's reasonable for DOT to put some type of timeline on to this board to see if we're going to continue on with the spirit of that letter, or if this project is going to be delayed.
May I ask one thing of Commissioner Shipp, and that is, a little while ago, you said we would miss out on $9 million. Well, we're not getting $9 million. We're not even getting 7 million, which is the 9 million less the cost to the right of way. We're not getting anything. We're not getting 4.5. We're not getting 9. We're just acting as a conduit at the behest of Chatham Park and the Department of Transportation. We have no say, no words, nothing. We're just doing it. And that just makes me feel really uncomfortable.
But if Chatham Park puts the money up, that's the only way the 4.5 comes back. So if we don't work together, we do lose out on the 4. We as a collective, whether it's Pittsboro or Chatham Park or us as a collective, we lose out on that. Unless I
No,
misunderstand.
we're not getting the 4.5.
The town of Pittsboro gets $4.5 million from the state if we participate in this program.
And we're obliged to give it to Chatham Park.
We're not. That's what we're discussing tonight. We
So
don't.
it's that pivot.
That's
right
the
there,
discussion
where I
tonight.
would
Now, Chatham
like to see
Park
some language
is
that
saying
includes us.
that's what we want you to do in exchange for this money. But at the end of the day, the roads in the town of Pittsboro will receive $4.5 million from the state that they won't receive if we don't participate in this program.
And we must use them in an area which is contiguous to Chatham Park.
That is the suggestion that they're offering, or we don't get it.
But I think that's the question that I am asking is how firm is that? That distinction, that caveat, that you all determine exactly where the money gets spent, where the roads get built.
I think that's where I'd like to have the opportunity on behalf of.
And
Chatham
come back.
Park, Come back in December.
Yep.
And see what we can propose.
That seems like the next
Address the
conversation.
Issues that Commissioner Shipp raised. I'm absolutely positive about that. Maybe we can come up with some creative ideas on how to address this. Because I do believe this is for the benefit of the citizens of Chatham, of Pittsburgh. And I think that it also helps Chatham Park, there's no question about it. But it's a state program. And just like the STIP is a state program. That 5930 has been approved. It will get constructed over time. This allows us to accelerate that process so that we relieve pressure off of other transportation infrastructure sooner and get a little bit ahead of the curve. That's benefit this program. Why that accrues to benefit a lot of citizens.
So I would ask John Bonitz if he would amend his motion to table this until the 12th day of December. That we could then apply ourselves to a negotiation which expresses the kind of cooperation that you have expressed tonight. And that we would work diligently to bring back a negotiation for that evening's agenda. Would you do that? And would there
Absolutely.
and would there be a second to Mr. Bonitz's motion?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Vose. May I call, is the question ready to be called?
I do have one other thing to say, and that is that we all, if we have additional questions,
Mhm.
we need to have those questions ready to be discussed on the 12th.
Mhm.
I think we should send them as soon as possible.
Well,
Because I mean, if
that'll be
we,
fine
if
too.
we bring them on the 12th, they're unlikely to get answered.
Well-
Or if there's, if someone has a, I guess I would say hard stance, you know, if the town doesn't get to spend the $4.5 million completely outside of the PDD, then I'm not in favor of it. That's not what I'm saying, but you know, if that's someone's stance about this apparent negotiation that we're going to do on the 12th, I think we should make that clear now, if that's your stance, or as soon as possible.
Well, I think that's casting into the future just a bit about what we would and would not, how we would negotiate. Now, I'm just saying that we have a motion on the floor. We have a second. We have a suggestion by the Mayor Pro-Tem that that we be speedy about our questions. And Commissioner Farrell, I'm sorry, what did you want?
I just had one question, Mr. Vernon. You said you had 5 years to spend this money, correct? The town would have 5 million to spend their 4.5. Is there a possibility that this 87 could be put on that STIP program in the next year or two? And the town would be able to have that 4.5 million for that STIP program on 87?
Sorry, I can't answer that, Commissioner. I have no idea what the DOT is going to do. We have made it clear that we are happy to work with the town to do whatever we can to before 87 to the STIP program. But I have no idea how the DOT will respond to your question.
My fragmentary understanding, Commissioner Farrell, is that it would require amendment to the STIP. There is an amendment process laid out in rules and with DOT. And I believe that it would actually have to go to the state board of the DOT, the governing board. So I think it's conceivable, but I've not looked into how long that amendment process takes.
And when we talk about 87, and we've done a lot tonight, what additional projects do we want done? We've already agreed, or we've already said that we want DOT to move the truck route to 87. What additional projects would we like DOT to do to 87 on top of that?
The project that was on the STIP previously was cut, as I understand it, to be from Al's Diner, West Street, running south on 87 down to 902. That's the problematic section in my understanding, because it is so very narrow for trucks. And as DOT projects often go, they do try to abide by the complete streets guidelines. And so that's why we're getting on Hillsborough Street. Change the subject a little bit. We're getting a multi-use pathway and sidewalk on Hillsborough Street because NCDOT wanted to widen the highway. So if NCDOT agrees to reprioritize Highway 87 for that narrow section, I'm not talking about north of West Street, because I don't believe that's the definition of the project that was on the STIP. I think that it was just from Halsteiner
I think it
down
was
to
the whole
902.
thing from
You
902
think it
up
was the
to,
whole thing? I think it was cut.
So the scope of the project is 12-foot wide lanes and a 4-foot wide paved shoulder. So
From where to
that's,
where?
From NC 902 to 64 bypass, 2.8 miles. That's what's in the STIP, but unfunded,
To the
Partially
bypass. Okay,
partially funded.
I stand corrected. You said corrected.
All right, are there any further questions? Are we ready to vote on the motion? Restating the motion is that we would table this matter until the next meeting on the 12th of December, that we would earnestly enter into negotiations and cooperation to seek a solution here, and that any additional questions that the board might have are urged to be submitted to Mr. Vernon as soon as possible.
can I make one additional amendment? Sorry, just to clarify what they've agreed to already is that they would remove the examples of the streets.
Yes,
They would clarify that the property would be controlled by CPI and that the town, they would reimburse the town for any cost related to the agreement.
I don't know about the others, but I mean, the requirement that it be CPI property is still problematic to me.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's to others or not. I mean, if you're talking about,
Commissioner Shipp, I know where you're going with that, and I think we're trying to avoid having another situation like the bisection of the Northwoods neighborhood.
Correct.
But the roads that have been discussed by Chatham Park investors are only on their land. So I don't think that particular text is necessary. And it does undermine the idea that Mayor Pro-Tem Baldwin and Mayor Perry have both spoken to, as have I, that there are other needs in town that need to be addressed with bonus allocation funds.
No, certainly. I think my point was that I think it is already addressed in the agreement that is proposed. My request was to make it more clear that that is what they're proposing in the current language. Or to reword the current language to make it more clear that that's what they're proposing, but certainly not that we will agree to it.
suggestions for how we would go about doing that. Mr. Vernon has already volunteered to take out the Settles and Eubank Road out of the process. But my hope is that we can come back in 2 weeks with a reasonable set of negotiations and cooperation. And I'm just wondering if we can proceed and that your inquiry would be protected in whatever it is we do on December 12th.
Yeah, I think that's good. I'm not sure
Okay.
we need to
All right.
include it.
Very good. All right. So we've restated the motion and I think we're ready to vote now. Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carried unanimously.
Excuse me, it's been an honor to address this board. Appreciate all the time and consideration that you've given to me and my client. Thank you very much for your attention and deep thought on this matter. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Vernon. And if I would like to have the opportunity to be able to have your business card so that we can set up some kind of negotiation discussions in the interim. The next matter is the telecommunications tower. Janie Phelps is going to lead us in a discussion of that, or is the board ready for a break?
My scratchy throat would appreciate a brief break.
Okay. 5-minute break then?
Thank you.
The parliamentarian advised me that we should have taken a vote on the break that we just took.
No.
And so would somebody please move that we take a 5-minute break 5 minutes ago?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Bonitz. Seconded by Commissioner James, second Vose. And those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
The motion carries unanimously. We're back now. Do we have to vote that we're back? Yes? Okay. We're back.
And
And could I have a motion that we resume the regular process of our meeting following our break?
move that we end the break and resume our work.
By Mr. Bonitz and seconded, I'm sure, by James Vose. Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Excellent. Okay. Thank you so much, Janie. We're ready for communication towers now.
Okay, thank you. So here we go. Perfect. So I was asked to draft just a simple memo about telecommunication towers because we've had some interest as far as some people are considering co-locating, but there's not an existing facility on it, but putting antennas on top of existing structures. So for example, a water tower, which is town property, and then also on other properties, so new facilities. And as I look through the UDO, the only place that they are allowed currently is in industrial. So as you all know, we don't have a lot of industrial zoning, and where we do have it, it's really just in one area of the town and within the town's limits. And so I wanted to bring this up to you all for a discussion, or if you just want me to go ahead and go through with it, to start drafting some language to actually have to allow telecommunication towers and facilities in other zoning districts, but also apply standards that would go for the development of them, because we can apply some standards. They can't be over restrictive, but we can say that, you know, there needs to be a barrier around like the fall zone or something, and there's certain requirements that go into it. So I just wanted to have that discussion with you all to gauge your interest on it.
Yes. Thank you so much, Janie. I'm so grateful to you for taking the initiative to seek board input, because that you may or may not know that there has been prior conversations about this. And indeed, there was a special use permit where Commissioner Baldwin and myself were very concerned about the interests of the neighbors, residences, and proper development of telecommunications infrastructure. So I'll share with you that as one commissioner, I would greatly prefer that we not have them near residences, multi-unit dwellings, or any other type of dwellings. We also need more definition, I believe, to discern between conventional cellular radio towers and what have been called small cell facilities, or the new 5G microwave towers. And these are often proposed immediately outside of mixed use buildings, for example, in dense neighborhoods, dense towns, which concerns me. So I would not support either kind of telecommunication towers in multifamily residential areas, nor in agricultural residential. The problem here is that the law does not allow, to my understanding, municipalities to constrain or really regulate 5th generation microwave communications equipment. And there is a really inadequate base of human health research on these technologies. For the great majority of people, radio and cellular telephone communication exposure to that, there's no problems. But for a minority of people, it does cause problems. And there is clear scientific evidence in animal studies of increased oxidative stress in the brain, in the body, and increased early cell death from certain bandwidths of a wireless radiation. But the FDA and the FCC have not funded the research on anything outside of harm from heating. So you're looking at the wrong thing there. That's my complaint to the federal government. So, you know, what's a local government to do with the lack of medical data, with a lack of real human health research? I think we should take the precautionary principle and not allow these things near residences. And again, I do think that we need to find some language to discern between the conventional cellular radio towers and the newer small cell facilities. A rather aesthetic matter is just that I would hope that with towers that require FCC, excuse me, what is the FAA lighting, that that lighting not be white strobe, that it be amber or red, because the white does have impacts on ecosystems and humans. So it just makes it harder to see at night if you're looking at a white strobe on a tower. So I think that may have already been addressed in our UDO, the red lamps, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'd have to double check on that, and I'll address a couple of things as far as being in proximity to certain locations. And I'm just going off of my experience in other jurisdictions. You can put a radius, so you can say that you can't have, 2 cell towers within 1.5 miles of each other. And so I haven't done too much research into it, because it's always already been there for me. But, it's addressed in 160D. And so that's our regulation that we have to go off of. So I can see if there's something specific in there, and also work with Mr. Misc potentially once I get some stuff together and some research or questions as well, in case he may have some answers too. So there is a potential, at least as far as between cell towers, of having a radius between those. I know that's been done. As far as the FAA regulations, I have had to reach out to them before, or instructed other people to reach out to them, because they were planning on putting up a structure that was going to be very high and very close to, this was down in Montier. So when I worked with Chatham County, so it was going to be really close to that private airport down there. And the FAA said it was fine. And that structure was proposed to be 250 feet or something. So you can also do specific requirements for cell tower height, I believe. And so as far as the town of Pittsboro, from what I've seen, and I don't work in telecommunications, but just from my general knowledge of doing it and permitting and everything, I wouldn't expect someone to put like a 200-foot tower in town.
Yeah.
I don't think that necessarily makes sense. Of course, there's other research that goes with it, and they have engineers doing it and everything, so it may be something different, but I just wanted to check with you all and, explore some other opportunities. Because something else I also just briefly put in the memo was, potentially allowing it in the residential with a conditional zoning only. So it would always come to you for new facilities, and then in the commercial districts with an SUP. So it would still come through you all, but it would just be a quasi judicial process instead of legislative.
Janie, I served on the Chatham County Planning Board years ago when we first passed a tower ordinance, and you're probably familiar with it from having worked there, but a strong preference towards co-location was included in that ordinance, and certain regulations regarding guy wires and fencing. So I would just urge co-location, because the proliferation of these towers can very easily get totally out of hand. And so
Good thoughts.
I think the co-location was really nicely done at the top of Fire Tower Road, when there were several instruments up there, antennas up there that had co-location located, on one tower. So anyway, so I'm sure you'll if you're, I'm sure you'll see all of that in the county ordinance.
Mhm.
Any other thoughts?
That special use of Tillman Tower from 2019 was one of my crossover ones from the planning board to the
Yeah.
town board. And I remember them talking at the time, the attorneys in the special use about that we don't have a co-location requirement. And that's why the tower was built across the street from the other one. Partially why maybe, but so I think co-location is great, you know, distance from others. Town facilities, I know that's something that Chris Kennedy had talked about before about that's a potential income opportunity.
Yep.
For that. And then really a special use permit limits our ability to do things. So I think good regulations leading to that special use permit process are helpful.
Yes.
So appreciate you taking this on. And
Exactly.
the biggest thing, I mean, for me, I think is that internet access and just simple cell phone calls are very difficult in Pittsboro. In my house downtown, I don't get cell phone signal everywhere. So I mean, that's a significant barrier to economic development and just health and safety, really. The other side of safety, I understand. So I think we really need to, it'd be good to have an updated look at what the technology requires for locations of towers to have good coverage, and how far we can put those away. And then I think John has a good point about 5G and microcells, start to see those a lot more places. Like Carborough, you know, along the street and things like that. So just what the technology requires for placement, and then, you know, how far outside of that we're allowed to do. So something else, and I think this would be part of this, but I've heard from a few property owners locally that our requirements around the property size for a tower are very large. And so it's limited their ability to like sell those in the future because of the land required around them. So I think some of the towers now are like collapse on themselves, they say. So just looking at the you know, smallest amount of land required for the parcel, in addition to other requirements about how far it needs to be from other areas.
Yeah, that's something common that I've seen too, because when I've, in the recent ones that I had done towards the end of my tenure in Chatham County, I had asked for the SA and what the fall zone was. And they said there is no fall zone anymore. A lot of them just collapse down on themselves. So, and generally, when a parcel is rezoned, it's just the easement or the access to the cell tower, and then the cell tower like square area. So it's, you know, it's very minimal. There's only 13 mentions of telecommunication in our UDO, and most of it's just definitions are included in other things. So we don't really have much to go off of, except for it's only permitted by right in industrial.
Well, protecting the dark night sky with the amber as opposed to the white strobes would be useful. I'm not shy of the height issue. I think others might have concerns. I don't. But the proliferation of the smaller cells concerns me. You know, I just would like it that they be positioned such that people can choose to avoid them if they wish. So if it's in a commercial area or multi-use area, well, no, if it's near residential, that it should not be allowed in my opinion. And then there was one other piece, I think, but thank you very much, Kyle, for your thoughts. And that's it. The quasi judicial process in many cases is very constraining, actually. So yeah, I think getting the rules right is the proper approach. So that's very much why I so appreciate you taking the initiative. I just hope that we can work out rules that allow for proper deployment and development of the communications technologies without allowing towers in proximity to residences. Thank you.
I guess just as a gauge, what is your definition of proximity within a residence? Because to someone it might be, you know, right in the backyard, but other people might be 200 feet. So
yeah, I think that's the great challenge is we just don't have the science, I don't believe, but I haven't recently done a search on these questions. The last I did check.
Excuse me. I think the good news is there's hundreds of communities across the country have dealt with all these issues that you've mentioned.
Yes.
And I feel like our staff's gonna be able to find
Mhm.
a good ordinance we're not the first people to do it and it'll work for our community. So I think
And I think this may be correcting a problem that we don't know that we have we have, some significant numbers of industrial parcels downtown and nearby homes where I guess are allowed by right now. So that's another, hopefully we're working out that with the land use plan anyway, but that's another
Yeah.
consideration of where they would be allowed now because we have manufacturing zoning downtown.
Yeah, that's right. And then prioritizing the co-location. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead. I'm good. But I think that's a great idea. So I look forward to you bringing something back to us so we can
Okay.
review it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Janie. Next on our agenda is the Citizens Academy, Pittsboro 101 Memorandum. Colby Sawyer is going to lead us in discussion of this initiative, along with an appropriation of $4,000 for governing board funds.
Hey, so good evening, Mayor, Board. I'll try to be as brief as I can. A few months ago, a few members of the board came to me asking for a Citizens Academy, some type of civic education type process that we could work through for our residents to, one, help them understand the functions and challenges of local government, but also to hopefully drive them to be more civically engaged. Citizens Academies are a great way to do that. Chatham County runs one with some regularity. Many of the jurisdictions around us run them. There's a lot of best practices, use cases out there showing how valuable they can be. So we sat down and worked with some of the other department heads to develop a very rough idea of what this would look like. And so where we're at now is we're looking at about an 8-week program, somewhere around 2 to 3 hours a week. We'll be starting our first academy with evening classes, I believe, to be able to get people who may work. As we grow the program in the future, we may run an evening academy at one part of the year and then a daytime academy at another part of the year. But right now we want to start with an evening academy. We're really looking for 15 to 25 people, maxing at 25, but really trying to stay around that 20 participant mark. Pretty simple requirements. We would like you to live in the town. Of course, we need you to be in all, and to successfully graduate from the program. We're looking for 75% participation in the classes. So 6 out of 8 sessions, and then they actually would have to attend one board meeting. Please let me say that all of these details are very rough right now. We ran some numbers based off of other jurisdictions and what it has cost them to run these types of programs, averaging those out and bumping up just a little bit to account for higher cost of everything. I come to around $3,800 for a class of 20 for 8 weeks. So I'm requesting $4,000 from that special events line item just to cover any rounding errors I may have made there. And to give you an idea of what this classes would look like, we would want to start with a lecture or discussion seminar type presentation from either department or from senior staff or subject matter experts and whatever is being discussed about what their department does, how they work, what are the limitations, what, for example, the planning department. If you've never worked through a permitting process, how are you to know what the planning department of the municipality actually does, how they benefit town residents? But we also want to put them through some type of exercise or activity, one, to drive engagement and keep people interested in the class, but two, to be able to see an example of that daily work. So for example, with your administration, when we cover administration and finance departments, that may be a tough budgeting exercise where they have we have a whole lot of expansion requests and not a whole lot of room for expansion. Where they have competing priorities and they have to figure out how they're going to budget for the upcoming year to let them see the real difficulties associated with municipal budgeting. And again, that's not a set in stone that would be the exercise, but something to that effect for each department to let them really see what these sections do. So if this is something that you're interested in, that you are pleased with the direction so far, I would ask for the funding as the next step. And once we know that funding is there, we'll go ahead and advertise the academy and finalize the coursework, finalize the exercises. We intend to start registrations in January. And other than that, if there's any questions.
Thank you. Make a motion to approve.
Yeah, great.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Shipp, seconded by Mayor Pro-Tem Baldwin. Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye
Aye.
enthusiastically.
Before you leave, I do want to provide some feedback and thank you so much for the thoughts that you've offered in the memo and what you shared with Hazen and he put in his weekly update. From that, and what you've said, I'm a little bit concerned about limiting it to town residents. 5,000 people is a small pool to draw from. And if you find that your registrations are low, I just want you to know that I, as one commissioner, am open very much to having people from the ETJ.
Yeah.
And I almost want to recommend that you set it as town or ETJ so that your very first start out of the gate is a successful one with good numbers. I think that folks who live in the ETJ need perhaps more of an education on town governance than folks in town limits, but because they have so many fewer interactions with town. But I appreciate you hearing me and thank you so much again for your efforts. Really looking forward to you kicking it off.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our miscellaneous item, sustainable development incentives, has been asked by the staff to be moved to the December 12th meeting. Do we need to have a vote on that? Madam Clerk? Do we have to vote on moving that agenda item? Okay. Could I have a motion to move the miscellaneous items, sustainable development incentives to December 12th meeting?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Bonitz.
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Vose. Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Sounds unanimous. Are there final comments this evening? Did Carrie get a chance to speak to each of you about the plans for the Christmas parade? Okay, we'll take care of that during non-official time. And any closing comments?
Closing comment about Wednesday. Actually, I think we said a 9 o'clock start time. Is that what we told the candidates also?
Yeah. Mhm.
So I'd like to propose a 8:30 start time for us to make sure that we're here. We can get settled a little bit. So I don't know if we can make that change now, but I don't think we should be showing up at the same time as the candidate, I guess. So.
Now, like preview some questions or anything.
Yeah.
Read over.
Yeah. And this afternoon late, I sent questions to everybody. If you don't like the question you're scheduled to ask, switch with somebody or go back into the list of questions and and swap it out for something, but there's a fair amount of duplication in there. And a lot of about strengths and leadership and style of leadership and things like that, that I thought that they probably had already covered through the departmental associates questions that started off their application process. So,
I'd say, as far as I'm concerned, we can tell them that business casual or is acceptable. I don't know how anybody else feels.
I'm good with that. I'm gonna be casual.
I'm gonna be casual.
well, I don't know. I guess I'm,
Dress up.
yeah, I think they can dress down after they get the job.
Okay.
I notice Hazen doesn't have a tie on tonight, so.
You're not fired. You're not fired. You got to come work tomorrow.
That's fine. No, that's fine.
Okay, no, okay, so, so is there a motion to adjourn, or if there's nothing else to,
I just have one other thing. I want to thank Mark Mitchell's paving company around town. They have really been on it. Some of these potholes around town.
oh,
They're a good group of guys.
good,
Local Moncur group, so they are on it.
good. Well, and while we're talking about road paving, I noticed that some of the roads, that have been most recently paved, the separation between the two runs of asphalt, the crack is already starting between the two runs of asphalt. I think, I guess it's probably a job of Adam Pickett to go through and assess paving. Yeah. Paving needs. So, okay.
I try to take pictures of it when I see something like that, but while we're on that subject, there was, I neglected to put in writing. The one right at Neil's convenience store on the circle.
Mm-hmm.
There was a hole left over from, I think, the circle improvement project.
They repaired that.
It has been repaired. Great.
Yeah.
Good to hear. Thank you. Yeah.
Very good. All right. Do we have a
Move for
motion to adjourn? Mhm.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Bonitz, seconded by Mr. Vose. Those in favor, please stand.